And we'll leave this for you up here.
Sure.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, maybe we'll get started. Thank you all for coming. My name is John Torpy. I'm director of the Ralph Bunche Institute here at the Graduate Center. And I want to thank, first of all, Patricia Nobbe for her efforts in putting this event together, and also our friends at NYU, Christian Martin, for bringing us today's speaker, really. An example of collaboration that I hope will continue in the future. This is not working, right? Or is it? No. Okay, but you can hear me anyway, right? It's not that big a room. So, it's our good fortune to have with us today Professor Thomas Straubhaar from the University of Hamburg, who is an economist and indeed the chair in international economic relations at the Department of Economics at the University of Hamburg in Germany. From 1999 to 2006, he was president of the Hamburg World Economic Archive, and from 2005 to 2014, director of the Hamburg Institute for the World Economy. Published widely on migration, demographic change, and technological change. He's the recipient of the prestigious Helmut Schmidt Fellowship of the Zeit Foundation at the Transatlantic Academy in Washington, D.C., and of the Ludwig Erhard Award for Excellence in Communicating Economics, which I think you're about to have a virtuoso experience of. He's one of the most prominent economists in Germany and frequently contributes his economic expertise to German language news media. And for myself, this is a great pleasure because this is something that I've been interested in increasingly for a while now. I think there's a way in which these kinds of issues, which are somewhat more future-oriented, have recently been covered over by intervening political developments that see greatness in a rather different period, well in the past. But in any case, I'm looking forward to the talk, which is called Radically Fair, How the Universal Basic Income is Modernizing the Welfare State. And I should say, perhaps before we start, that our commentator, discussant, Professor Lynn Chancer, has, I'm afraid, taken ill and is not going to be able to join us today, so I'll provide a few comments before we open things up for discussion. So please, Professor Straubhaar.
Okay, so thank you so much for the invitation. Thanks, Christian. Thanks, Patricia, for bringing me over to City University. It's a great pleasure being here and to present a few ideas about the universal basic income. And as you just said, there was a wave of interest, of course, in the last years, increasing also in the United States. Most of it probably in Silicon Valley, with all the internet firms that somehow feel that there is a change in technology that may probably lead to a kind of new allocation of labor and new processes and new relationships between labor and capital. And in Germany, there is still an increasing interest. I'm actually going over because I need to touch the screen somehow. There is an increasing interest in Germany still on that topic because many people also feel that somehow the promises of, let's say, the neoclassical models in economics did not really being fulfilled, that different to the expectation, there is not a convergence process between the incomes, and that it is rather a kind of divergence between the rather poorer income receivers and the people that are doing higher qualified work. So this is something that puzzles people, and they think that probably over the last couple of years allocation has somehow dominated distribution issues, and that we should probably bring back the questions of how to distribute the incomes, and this will definitely be a kind of main topic in the ongoing election campaign for the German parliament. And we have elections this fall. And that's actually the literature that you may know from the discussion you have had in the United States about the rise of the robots and whether they are going to substitute the labor force and whether there will be a kind of jobless future. And of course, if you're going to substitute labor by robots, you have a problem to somehow levy taxes because normally and in most countries, most of the tax comes and stems from labor. And so if you're going to substitute labor by robots, then you might run into the problem of decreasing tax incomes for the public coffers. And then why, actually this will also be a question in my presentation, and that has stimulated or motivated me to think about a universal basic income, that there is a kind of basic argument, very often pronounced, that it is difficult to tax capital because capital will just be very mobile and just escape from being taxed. And actually, if you are really looking at the data, you see that this is a kind of a myth because you might probably have heard about the Feldstein-Horioka paradoxon that says that basically still most capital is invested locally and that it is very mobile just in the form of financial capital but not of physical capital. But still, if you're going to tax labor and the labor force somehow is diminishing and robots are going to overtake the jobs, then you may have a problem. So in my 30 minutes, I'm going to touch 3 sections. I'm going to start with addressing the problem. What are the challenges? Why should we rethink the social welfare state? And of course, my focus is European. I know that in the United States you have other discussions about your social welfare state, and they will probably become even more intensified now. But this is I'm focusing on Europe, and in the first section I'm going to talk about what are the challenges for the European welfare state. And second, then the solution, how to overcome these challenges, and there I will somehow speak about the universal basic income as an option, as a potential solution, and then in the third part I will conclude with a few final remarks. So let me start with the problems, and actually I'm an economist, I have to say so, and approach the issue from an economic perspective, what happened in the last decades is very easily to summarize. Basically, labor has become abundant, and there was an increase of labor force due to two fundamental changes. One is globalization, and the other one is digitization. And both have somehow worked into the same direction. Both have somehow increased the supply of labor in a way. And rather unqualified labor at the beginning and more qualified later on. But globalization, to start with, actually just means that after the fall of the Iron Wall or curtain or fence in the Berlin Wall in the end of 1980s, there is a 1 billion more labor force to come and to compete with European workers. All the people from the East were ready in a way to do the same job but cheaper. And so you have competition, an increase in competition for the working class in Europe. And now it's digitization. And it's again the same. Somehow it's still an increase in, let's say, simple work tasks, now done probably by robots and not labor force, but still competing unqualified labor. And now it becomes obvious what is the problem or the outcome. If you have an increase in one factor of production, labor, and the other stays more or less stable, then you have a relationship that turns income as a share, as a proportion of the total, from labor to capital. Because labor is more abundant and capital is more scarce in a way. So that means, and that's what Thomas Piketty, I think, has well established, and some people here in the university also have worked on and have shown that probably there is a gap, an increasing gap, and more and more, a larger and larger share, a larger and larger proportion of GDP somehow goes to capital, probably including human capital or qualified labor force, and less is going to rather unskilled or unqualified labor. And of course, this is the main reason why you see this increasing gap, this divergence and not convergence of standard of living patterns. So that's, let's say, these are the changes. Both working into the same direction. Then you have demography. And in Europe, it's different from the United States. In Europe, fertility rates are still relatively low. It's about 1.5 in the average, meaning that there are less and less younger people following the cohorts ahead, replacing the elderly people. And on the other hand, life expectancy is still increasing, quite and somehow gratefully and luckily. It is still increasing by something about 2 years per decade, the life expectancy at birth. So more and more people live longer and longer, and there are less and less people to support the elderly. So the whole retirement system will come under pressure. And the age dependency ratio is turning into a situation where less and less younger people have to pay more and more contributions for more and more elderly people. And the last point is, of course, something like a new world of labor, a new kind of situation in the labor market, but also has a kind of impact on the social welfare state, because the European social welfare state is established, is somehow built according to the expectation that you get your education. Then let's say with 20 you enter the labor market, then you work full time, and then by 65 or 67, or probably some days 68 or 69, you leave the labor market, you get retired, and then you get a pension according to the years you have worked. It's the so-called equivalence principle. And then you get the pension according to your payments, in a way. The problem is, the legend goes, or the belief is, that you have a uninterrupted, a linear, lifelong work experience, full time. Whatever we think, and this is something we have to discuss, and I'm not sure about
what will really happen with the jobs, whether the robots are going to take away the jobs and there will be no new jobs, whether there is a kind of negative balance. Actually, surveys say that about 50% of all jobs will probably gonna be lost and will probably just vanish. That's the old story. It was always the case that people were afraid of losing their jobs to machineries, and there was always an increase in new jobs. But whatever we mean about that, what almost for certain will happen is that somehow full-time work will not be something normal anymore. Full-time work as we have it nowadays, with probably 40 hours per week. That somehow you will work less, that the average workload per week or per month or per year will become lower, and that you will have sequences, periods of rather part-time or no work, that you're going for a further education, that you take more time to spend with your kids or families, that you take a sabbatical, as you do it in universities, that more and more people working with their heads and working with their human capital somehow have to refresh their knowledge and skills and are leaving the working process just to improve and to requalify, to become requalified. So that's the story. These are the challenges. Now, how should and could we react to these challenges? Could we just go on as we did in the last years? I mean, the European welfare state has been established in the 19th century in a completely different setting. That was the high time of industrialization. Most people working on assembly lines. And now, how could we adjust our system? And first point, as scientists, as researchers, as academics, somehow we have to ask ourselves, what is the framework within we are going to measure the, let's say, the quality of a new welfare state system. What are the criteria that we are going to somehow judge whether a new welfare state is able to compete and somehow to overcome the challenges? And I think these are the 4 criteria we should somehow test. And that will also be the test for the UBI, whether the UBI is with regard to these 4 criteria somehow better, somehow more viable to the or feasible to the challenges. The first one is effectiveness. Effectiveness means whether the social welfare state really reflects reality, whether really it somehow touches the experience of most of the people, or whether this is a kind of a system that does not correspond to the experience of people, whether it is somehow reflecting a time that has gone. So effectiveness means whether it takes really up with the challenges that I have just addressed at the beginning. Efficiency means whether a system is able to reach political goals with minimum economic costs. That means that we are going to spend the euros or the dollars in a most efficient way, so that we are not going to waste money, so that we are not going to spoil potential effects. And this has, of course, something to do with simplicity, transparency, whether you really have a connection between goals and instruments. The third one, it should somehow be a system that corresponds to some liberal requirements, corresponding to the free market economy, if you want me to say so, And from micro and macro analysis, we know that policies are the best if they somehow work in a blind style, that they are not going to discriminate or privilege certain behaviors, that they are not going to have a precondition how people should act to get something, that policies should just be directed towards the goal, in this case, social security, meaning that it should avoid, let's say, poverty. That could be a social goal. And that it should not be mixed with other goals, like probably having more high fertility rates, more kids that are being born, or with regional aspects, or with sexual aspects, that you should, a social welfare state should have two goals, probably. One is avoiding poverty, and somehow the second is equalizing somehow standards of living. And the last point is fairness, because this is an insight you may have gained also from the elections in the United States, that somehow people are very sensitive to results that they feel and judge like unfair, that they think the outcome, that the outcome is somehow distributed unfair, that there is a kind of establishment and we the people, and that there is a kind of discrepancy between the two. Fairness matters a lot. And that's actually something for political scientists in this room, or sociologists in this room, that sometimes that's what probably is a discussion about fake news. That sometimes for political decision-making processes, it is not that important to have the real data. It's something that somehow people feel, or something that people, that's their interpretation of the real data that matters. It's not so much the data itself, it's somehow the perception of the data that probably matters. And fairness is, of course, something like that. That people feel probably that the outcome, that the proportion of capital income is increasing and the proportion of labor income is decreasing, that they judge it or believe this is not fair. So these are the 4 criteria that you should have in mind talking about the social welfare state in the future. And why do I make this point so serious, so strong, so long? Because, as I know from experience, there are many arguments against the UBI, no doubt. This is not the paradise I'm going to present you. There are a lot of risks and challenges and uncertainties. But the problem is, you have to measure all the other options. One option could be just staying on with the old welfare state, with the same criteria. And then you may see that probably in an analysis, in a comparison of the different options, the UBI will, in some, probably be the one that fulfills best the sum of these 4 criteria. Okay, now what is a UBI? Basically, a UBI is nothing else than a huge tax reform, combining in one single instrument all the taxes and all the subsidies or payments from the state to the people. It combines all the payments called taxes from people to the state, but also all the subsidies and payments from the state to the people in one single argument, in one single instrument. So it's kind of an application of Milton Friedman's negative income tax. It's a negative income tax. And in a minute I'll tell you why we are calling it negative. But it's actually a universal instrument combining all the financial interactions between people and the state. That's the basic idea. Nothing more. Second point, that's why unconditional. That's the conditionality that somehow makes this concept so worrisome for many people. Of course, unconditional means that we are going to work on the argument that you should have a blind kind of policy, that you should not have preconditions to be fulfilled to get the payment. And unconditional means you get this kind of payment from the state, this support that should avoid you poverty, independent of your age. So you get it from the first to the last hour of your life. And you get it independent of your gender, independent of your age, independent of your status in the labor market, whether you are employed, unemployed, self-employed, whether you are a full-time or part-time worker, whether you do not work at all, doesn't matter. Third point is the question how you are going to finance this system. And because it's a universal instrument, as I've said, because it's a negative income tax, as I'll show you in a second, you have to to work on the income side, because you have to combine the basic income principle with the taxing principle. And here I know that probably I did not do the best when I'm going to talk in a second about the value-added tax, because in the United States a value-added tax is an indirect tax. Here we are talking about direct taxes. And the point is that with this direct tax, you should levy a tax on all value-added. Value-added means all the outcome of production. And so you are not going to tax production factors as you do it right now. Nowadays you are going to tax labor, you are going to tax capital, you are going to tax profits. Entrepreneurs in a way. In this model you are going to tax people when they get money as the result of the production process. So you are going to produce something, cars, and then Ford is going to make sales, and at the end of the day they are going to pay workers, so you are going to tax workers, you're going to levy a tax on working income. Then they are going to pay interest rates for the capital they are going to use, so you're going to tax their payments to the capital owners. And at the end they will hopefully do profits, and then you're going to tax profits. The point is that you're going to tax all the income independent on the source with the same tax rate. You're going to apply the same tax rate for every euro or dollar income produced. That is the requirement for simplicity. Why? Because then you do not have to declare taxes at the end. And you are also not going to tax companies. You are going to tax income receivers.
Same rate?
Same rate. Flat.
Same rate for all incomes?
For all incomes. That's very important. That's very, very important. We come back to this in a second. But it's a very good question, thank you. It's the same tax. Actually, this is something, it's a normative judgment now when I'm saying that it is something troublesome in Germany, that the worker is being taxed, the robot is not taxed. Because we are not going to tax production factor. If we take a robot as a capital, the use of capital, then we have tax on capital income. But the tax on capital income is a 25% flat tax. Work income, labor income, wage taxes go up to 45%. And then, probably not well known in the United States, very well known in Germany, we have social contributions to the social security system that are just levied on labor income for the employees. So in this system, you are going to levy the same tax on all kind of incomes, and you are going to drop the contributions, the wage payments to the social security system. We come back to this at the very end when we are going to talk about losers and winners. I can just tell you, this is, for lower incomes, this will be a dramatic tax reduction. For higher labor income, it may be a small increase. In my model, I just as an attempt to illustrate, I worked with a 50% tax. Nowadays, it's a 45%. That's the top tax rate to be paid. So it's a slight increase, and it is a dramatic increase for the capital income. A dramatic increase in taxing the capital income. So the capital owners, they will be against. The labor income owners or the workers, they will be in favor of such a model. That's how a negative income tax works. Sorry for the German, but I think that you have seen such a model before. On the x-axis you have the gross income, on the vertical axis you have the net income. The black line is without interactions with the state, where gross is net. The gray line is the net income after tax and after having received basic income. And what you can see, and now that's why it's called negative, because below the break-even income in my model, where I have, that is just an assumption, I have assumed that the universal basic income would be 12,000 euro per year, and I have applied a 50% tax rate on every single euro earned. Then people with an income below 24, they get something from the state. They are from the perspective of the public coffers, they are a negative factor. The state pays them more than they pay taxes to the state, and above the 24,000 euro, this is how you know it. This is a positive flow of taxes to the state. You can see 2 points. First, that it is a fair system. It is somehow what we would probably call a system that fulfills the requirements of fairness, because the more you earn, the higher is the net balance with regard to taxes. The more you earn, the higher is your tax burden. This is in absolute values. And the same is absolutely true if you are going to look at the relative, just at the net tax rates. The net tax rate is progressive. That means the more you earn, the higher is the tax rate. Why is it the case? Because a negative income system has this constant term and a flat tax rate. A flat tax rate with a constant terms gives a progressive net tax rate. That's pure math. So that's the system. A few questions to end with. First, is it effective? Will people still go to work if their minimum income, if their subsistence is covered? Good question. I'm sure we are going to discuss this later on. Just to mention it, there is good economic evidence that indeed people are always willing to earn more than subsistence. That they have an incentive to work and to improve their lives above subsistence level. Actually, I could calculate you afterwards if you want to show you that in the last years, this German job miracle you may have heard about, mostly basis on people that work for an increase in their net salaries of about 2 euros per hour. So people doing jobs as a butcher or a watchman or some guardians or some other rather simple jobs, they earn per hour net 2 euro more than compared to a situation where they would just lay on the couch and stay home and do nothing. So that shows you that people are really willing to work. Is it liberal? Yes. That's why it is not conditional. So you are not going to have an ex-ante discrimination for some specific behavior. Is it fundable? Yes, but this is basically the wrong question. You should not start with the question whether a system is fundable. The first question you have to ask is, what are the goals of a system? What do we expect from a social welfare state? What is the goal? What should be covered and where should the poverty line be defined? And this is a political decision. That's why I'm not going to say what is the level of the basic income. This is a political decision. For this you have all 4 or 5 years elections. And if someone is going to promise you that he or she will go to increase the level of basic income, then as an economist I would say then you have to increase taxes and then you may probably have negative incentives for work. And some other parties will probably say we are going to lower the basic income. If you are going to elect me, then I'm going to lower the basic income because then I could also lower the tax rates and then the incentives for work are increasing. That's a political decision. So I'm going to conclude with a few remarks. First, the future is so completely different from the past that we may probably be well advised to adjust our systems to the future and not try to change the world, to adjust the world to the system of the past. Change the system, not the world. It's easier. And very last point, as I've said at the beginning, do not compare the UBI with paradise. Compare different other alternatives with this model according to the criteria I've mentioned: fairness, efficiency, effectiveness, liberal system or not. So it is kind of a benchmark. It's not a kind of a, let's say, unique solution for the welfare state. It's just a kind of model that enables you to compare alternatives. And I think I stop here, and thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the comments and then of course to the further discussion. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for that discussion of the universal basic income, or you're calling it the unconditional basic income. It seems to come in different flavors. There's the universal basic income, and unconditional basic income, and sometimes the guaranteed minimum income. And I'm not sure whether there are frankly differences among those. I think they're essentially synonymous, but it seems to me this is a very important discussion that has been, frankly, kicking around mostly in Europe for a long time. It's often attributed to Milton Friedman and his kind of ideas about a negative income tax. But the important thing about that is that it's, in fact, had a certain amount of support from both the left and the right, which makes it an unusual idea in that respect. In the United States recently, really last summer, I think there was a kind of confluence of a number of people talking about this. Those of you who read the New York Times regularly may recall that Eduardo Porter and others were discussing this and mentioning that even Lawrence Summers, who once thought this was a crazy pipe dream of sociologists, now even he thought maybe those people aren't entirely crazy. Although, it's not to say he's a big enthusiast necessarily just yet. The New Yorker was writing about this positively. The Economist was writing about it negatively, basically on the grounds that this would, lead to a collapse of the work ethic. So there obviously are debates, but what to me was striking was that this was a discussion that was taking place in the United States at all, whereas normally it was the kind of thing that we thought wacky European liberals or leftists would come up with that would have no relevance ever to us. Another striking development, it seems to me, is that people in Silicon Valley have begun to address this idea, to explore this idea. A number of CEOs of Silicon Valley companies have recently gotten together to talk about the consequences of the technological developments that they're, of course, creating, and particularly the consequences for the job market that might ensue from, widespread robotization, essentially, of the economy. And so there's a sort of a tech incubator firm, I guess, called Y Combinator, which is itself running an experiment along these lines to give a guaranteed minimum income to, I think it's about 10,000 people in Oakland over the next 2 years or so to explore who exactly, how people respond to this. So clearly this is a discussion whose time at least had come. As I said at the beginning, it's not clear that we're going to have a lot of discussions of this at the policy level in an administration that is focused, primarily on sort of rebuilding American manufacturing might and capacity. So it remains to be seen whether this is going to sort of return in a way to the back burner, as a number of things might be doing for the next little while, as long as President Trump is in office. So it's not clear, where this is going, but it certainly had a certain efflorescence certainly in the last year. And of course, it's been going on in Europe for much longer time. I mean, people like Philippe van Parijs and Klaus Offe have been working on this through something called the Basic Income Earth Network, which conveniently spells the word BN, which, of course, works in a couple of different languages here. There's a way in which this is a discussion whose time seems to have come and is obviously on the minds of, lots of people who have reason to think about these things. But obviously one big question is really this question about whether or not jobs are going to disappear or not. I guess you said that as a caveat. But certainly, many would say that people like Brynjolfsson and McAfee, thank you, are too boosterish about this economy. I mean, boosterish in a weird way because the economy that they see coming is so heavily automated that's going to eliminate all kinds of jobs. And there's research out there that suggests that it's not always like this, right? I mean, jobs are eliminated and that's very visible, but new jobs are created, and there's a debate going on among economists about that question. So the question is really whether you say we shouldn't compare this with paradise, but it's often struck me that there's a way in which the vision of the future of people like Brynjolfsson and McAfee is essentially Marx's communist society. I mean, Marx understood perfectly well that the kind of world that he envisioned required enormous production, required what he recognized to be the world's most productive economic system that had been created. And there's a way in which it seems like that's, what we're talking about. It may not be paradise, but it's certainly, a lot of this is, of course, reduced the amount of drudgery and hard physical labor that people have had to do, which has no doubt contributed to these extended life expectancies that you mentioned. So these are all, I think, very significant issues, but nonetheless, it does seem as though a lot of people are kind of gravitating to the idea that the lengthening of lifespans and the vagaries of the labor market are such that lots of people are not going to spend, their lives from the age of 18 to the age of 65 working and then retire and die a couple of years later. I mean, that world is obviously in the past, and the one that we're living in is one in which frontier life expectancy is expected by 2030, frontier life expectancy being the highest rate, highest life expectancy sort of anywhere in the world, is expected to be 90 years at birth, starting by around 2030. So we're going to have a lot more older people around who, are not necessarily in a position to do a lot of physical work, but can do many other things. But their relationship to the labor market is clearly not going to be the one that was a sort of working for 35 years for GM or for IBM or whoever, and then retiring. So one question is, simply what are those people going to do with themselves, and how are they going to maintain themselves in a world in which that kind of career trajectory is simply no longer part of the scene. The other big question, it seems to me, is that, at least for the United States, and I know you emphasized that you're really talking about the European scene, but there is obviously a way in which, many people out there, I think, look in the United States, look at this and say, this is a socialist system, and it's basically going to reward ne'er-do-wells. And as you pointed out, I mean, that was seems to have been a significant element of the sort of vote for the new president, that there were many people out there who felt like other people, undeserving people, were getting rewarded in various ways when they had been waiting their turn, as one book found. That there's a certain, I always cringe a little bit when people bring up, academic sabbaticals, because it just convinces everybody out there that we really, have pretty cushy gigs and nobody does anything on these sabbaticals and that sort of thing. So, but I mean, maybe, we should say sabbaticals for all, and that should be something that everybody, in a way, expects to do. So, I guess those are the sorts of comments that I have. I mean, I don't have any specific questions other than the sorts of issues that I've raised about, the real likelihood of a transformation of the labor market in such a way that all these jobs are really going to be eliminated. I mean, if the autonomous vehicles that Ford and other companies are talking about creating, really arrive on the scene, lots of drivers' jobs are clearly going to disappear. But again, I mean, what we see, that's what we see. We see the elimination of jobs, but we don't necessarily so much see the creation of jobs, the other side of that. So maybe you could talk to that a little bit. And,
Thank you so much. I really would like to just add some thoughts on your comments, starting with the reactions in the Silicon Valley about how to somehow go along with the robots. And Bill Gates a week ago has had a video on YouTube about why he is in favor of taxing robots. I think from an economic point of view, taxing robots would be the completely wrong approach, because this actually has happened in history in France. At the beginning of industrialization, they started to have a kind of machinery tax, and the outcome was that industrialization has accelerated in Great Britain and has been somehow hindered in France, and that was the reason why Great Britain has overtaken France at the beginning of industrialization. Because if you are going, this is a kind of socialist approach. I would agree on that, but that is the point where Marx was completely wrong when he had this kind of conflict between labor and capital. Labor and capital are not enemies, they are friends, because it is capital that makes labor productive. And so labor should not try to avoid the implementation of capital. It should even enforce it, because the more capital intensive production is, the higher is labor productivity, and the higher labor productivity is, the higher are wages. So it is the capital that makes high wages, not the labor. That's the tragedy of a labor intensive production. So that's why taxing robots would really be a kind of shooting his own leg, because then you may probably protect your working place against the robot, but you would lose competitiveness against workers abroad making use of the robots. And that's why I say it is much more clever not to tax robots, but the owners of the robots. So let the production process be a black box. Don't intervene from the outside into this black box by taxing certain behaviors. What is a robot, actually? Then you have the problem of definition. What is a robot? What is the difference between a robot and an ATM, for example? When does a robot start becoming kind of a problem that you should tax? And when it is just an appliance that you should, a PC, is it a robot or not? Are we going to tax PCs? Then may God help us. I mean, then this is definitely the wrong approach. So that's why I think we should think about a system that is blind against the production process, but still helps workers somehow to go along with the increasing use of robots. By the way, actually, just to tell you something, the students here in the room don't believe that robots and artificial intelligence is just going to compete with unqualified labor. I mean, professors will be substituted sooner or later. That's a question of time. It's a question of time that we have a completely different teaching, a completely different kind of go along with skills. You do not need lawyers in the, I mean, you need some lawyers, but not the lawyers that are just checking lists and are going to make crosses that is being done by artificial intelligence much more efficient. You do not need surgeons that somehow do the analysis. You can do this much more precise and with a higher quality by systems. You do not need bankers anymore. The banking industry will completely change. This is for young guys as we were. I'm sure it's ridiculous if you can look how elderly people in Europe is still paying their bills. Nowadays you do a shop and it's just done. So that's the world of the future. So I think we have to take into account these developments. Last point, one point. This is normative. I know this is very normative in a way, but somehow we have to talk at least about the increasing life expectancy. This is true. In the average, life expectancy is increasing. The problem is that the life expectancy is still highly, at least in Europe, where I have the data, I'm not sure how it is in the United States, it highly correlates with income. And whether you are a hard worker or a brain worker, a white or a blue collar worker. So for the rather unqualified worker, for them in Europe, the period where they get the pension did not increase over the last couple of years. That's a drama, that's a tragedy. It increased for professors, but not for the blue-collar workers. It increased slightly, but not in the same way. The gap has increased again. We have our, and then one comment, the sabbatical for all. Yes, and this is urgently needed more than ever to compete with all this fast technological change. When I became a professor, and I still am a professor in Europe, I teach younger people. Then afterwards, there is some business school for the MBAs, but basically you get a one-time university education. This is somehow gone. You have to come back several times, so we have to adjust also this part of the public policies. I think I stop here. Thanks.
Okay, let's open it up for discussion.
You mentioned fair and efficient.
Yep.
As part of your. Have you done any studies at all to find any political system which appears to be qualified to make this efficient and fair as opposed to bureaucratic and bumbling?
Yes, actually, I understand your question. UBI is, in a way, efficient because it does not need a huge bureaucracy. It does not need a kind of state.
Need doesn't necessarily reflect in what it gets. We have seen programs that start with a goal and an objective
I know.
that's clear, and then a politician says, why don't I add this?
I know.
And do this, and then
I know.
go here, and
I know.
do this.
I know.
What's the protection?
That's a good question. Your argument becomes true if we start talking about health insurance. When we are going to talk about whether people that have a strong disease, they may need a different approach than the others, and so. But again, compared to all the other systems, for sure, you could downsize bureaucracy dramatically because you have a flat tax rate levied at the source where income is generated. So you really do not have to declare taxes, basically. And now comes your argument that basically is in theory, and in reality there will be much more exceptions from the rules as I have presented. Fair enough, but still, this you have in any system. I would say the options to increased bureaucracy is lower compared to other systems.
Could I suggest the state of Alaska as an example of a place that has run
Yep.
a system like this? The expenditure part of it, and it's not the complete system that you're advocating, but they seem to have done a fairly good job with it
Yeah.
for 30 years or so.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And there are other smaller field pilot projects, like Finland starts. India, as you could have read in the Economist 2 weeks ago, India is going to start a kind of UBI, but I wouldn't compare the Indian case with my case, because in India this is really just to somehow fight against poverty. It is really, I mean, subsistence in India is, then we are going to talk really about poverty. And it is just an attempt to make somehow the survival easier for the mass of Indians. So we are talking about a different approach. Switzerland actually has had an election, a vote, a referendum last June 2016. And actually, I'm Swiss, so I had this was the stimulus, this was the motivation to go on with this project, because this was the lesson I've learned, that for the first time, when I did policy advice and policy consulting, the younger people came and said this is for the first time in their life that they feel that this is a system that is not going to be backwards oriented but forward oriented, and that they see somehow that it goes about their future and not the past, the future of the former generations. To Alaska, one more point. Why did I combine the basic income, the expenditure side, with the income side, the tax side? A couple of years ago, we did a large research project about the economics of reform, where we analyzed worldwide which kind of reforms have become successful, like the Thatcher one, or the Reagan one, or the New Zealand one, or in Sweden there was a... So we analyzed what were the preconditions for reforms to become successful. And one of the outcomes is that you need to address and to find and to get the support of people that are going to benefit from a reform. If you are just going to deal with the expenditure side, with the basic income side, then everybody would somehow say that's the same. So I'm not going to see how does this affect my balance, my incidence, my budget incidence. So the idea was with the tax side, with the income side, to define, to really show the people with lower incomes that they will be on the good side, that they will benefit from the system change, so that you have allied people that are going to fight for the reform. That's an experience.
Yes. I think it's against any economic common sense to tax the three factors in the same way. If I get my income from rents, I shouldn't be taxed the same way as somebody who makes their income with blood, sweat and tears, like wages. And capital, I totally agree with you, capital is the friend of labor and they're on the same team. So I do not think your system is economically fair. I mean, you have the words in it, but I think you need to change something. I mean, I think if you see it in classical economic terms, I think you will be able to disambiguate and make it clearer to more people and make it palatable to the worker. Now you're telling him you're going to tax him the same level as some like big rentier. How are you going to achieve equality? You are not going to. If rents are like 60% and you're going to tax me at the same rate as somebody who has wages who make like 30% of the wealth pie, you're never going to achieve equality. So I think that's a contradiction. Maybe I'm not understanding something, or maybe it should be, but I think it should be phrased in different terms.
Okay, thank you. I understand what you are saying. My point, my answer, or my contra argument would be that from an economic point of view, it makes a lot of sense not to privilege or discriminate one production factor against the other. Take the production process as a black box. Why are you going to say? Well, no. Why are you going to say that you? Why are you going to say that you are going to privilege a capital-intensive production process against a labor-intensive production process? That's purely arbitrary.
No, but see, I'm not making that distinction, and you are not either. So the whole point is rental income, unearned income. That's what you should be targeting. I mean, I research, for example, municipal budgets, and in my research, New York City budget can do away with all the taxes, including VAT, just by taxing the rental incomes, not even at the 90 or 100% that should be economically just, but even at 14%. So can you imagine a system that with 14% of taxing of unproductive income would undo all taxes on production? Everybody would vote for that. But for some reason
I understand what you are saying. In the current system of the United States, of course, you need a kind of community tax instrument, and there you may probably take the rent as an objective. In my model, I would also say that it doesn't matter what kind of source income has. Income is income. Of course, you would have a kind of adjustment process. I agree on that. But after a while, from one steady state to the other, there may be a kind of adjustment cost. I agree. But once you have a equal tax rate for every kind of income, then you can take a share of this income to finance the public goods of a community. The United States system is not the only one that exists in the world. I mean, this is, for Europeans, your system is rather unfamiliar. To have all the local stuff financed by local taxes. In Europe, in Germany, it's not the case. I mean, we have a kind of local tax, but this is a relatively small source of income for the communities. Most is redistributed over incomes. I understand what you're saying, but that is probably a country-specific issue.
Thank you. This is quite provocative. I think there's another discussion. You referred to India, but in fact, there's been experiments. In fact, the German Protestant churches were quite involved in Namibia in something called BIG, the Basic Income Grant. Tiny, just for the destitute poor, or universal. And there's also an international agreement on a social protection floor, which should be universal, and it was adopted at the ILO at one of their international conferences, and the group of 20 is promoting it, and so on. So, there's stuff out there. It's not the same as what they're arguing in Silicon Valley, which has an additional dimension you haven't mentioned, which is that if the income distribution is so uneven and getting more uneven, then you have an aggregate demand problem. And the basic income grant would help solve that. But I also think, as somebody mentioned about health and insurance, so there's another dimension that you need if you're going to have a social function
Yeah.
served by this,
Yeah.
which is insurance.
Yeah.
So that it's not just income on an annual basis, but also, I suppose you could have the private sector providing the insurance,
Yeah.
but we know that there are certain advantages to a single payer system. And finally, if the tax system you propose is the complete tax system, then you can't have things like a carbon tax or taxes that try to affect behavior. Is that right? Or?
No. Very good questions. Thank you. I start with the last one. I'm not going to touch on all the other kind of taxes that somehow have also reasons to regulate or have influence or having a change on behavior or whatever. That's still feasible and still possible and still an option. I'm also not going to touch on the indirect taxes. I know that value-added tax in the United States is an indirect tax, so you can still have it because there are other public goods to be delivered, like schooling, probably, at least in Europe. Probably not so much in the United States, but in Europe, it is no question that at least partly school is a public good and universities is partly a public good, and this is still financed by kind of taxes.
Yes, sure.
And also defense and whatever legal system. So, okay, this is untouched. This is still possible. I'm just talking about the social security, the welfare state, the part of the state. First question, yes, this is a system that I would rather apply to highly industrialized, highly developed countries, where you have a kind of increasing capital-intensive share of production. I would probably not start in countries with a high labor-intensive production or share in the production process. I did not mention, but thanks, because it supports my argument, the Keynesian demand impacts, the multiplier over the demand that impacts that if you are going to somehow shift purchasing power from richer or capital owners to poorer working families, then they may spend a lot more and have a higher multiplier than it is the case right now. And with the insurance, of course, there is a need for health insurance, yes. Actually, in my model or in my proposal, I say yes, it is included in you have to pay the insurance fees from the universal basic income. And I have tried 3 different options, and it is a political decision which one you are going to take and use and decide for. One is, let's say, the Scandinavian model, where you have a kind of a public delivery, a public medical system. The second one is probably the American model, where you have privatized most of the health insurance sector. And the third one, a compromise, could be the Swiss system, where you have a kind of compulsory insurance for a basic medical package, and all above is somehow privatized and has to be paid on your own. So this is a political decision which one you are going to choose.
But why, if I can just quickly follow up, why not also do it in poor countries?
Not also do
the
in poor countries.
Yeah. I mean, or even middle, Brazil, Mexico, Thailand.
I was happy to have a model for Germany and for Europe. I know Europe. I'm not so.
Because the principle,
I feel not so sure whether I would start it in India or in Brazil or in Namibia. I know that they have had such an experience, but my experience with, let's say, African or Latin American countries is that they tick different. They act different. They have another. They have another way of doing things. Yes. That's my answer. It's probably not the best answer. That's why I was concentrating on Germany.
Mhm. So we have time for basically one last question, which I think I'm going to ask unless. Well, so this gets into the political side of things. And I guess it would be useful for us to know a little bit more about why did the Swiss referendum fail? What's going on in Finland? I don't really know the detail. I mean, I know that there's something going on, but exactly the details, I'm not sure. How do you see the prospects of this in various places? I know you said it's been discussed in the French presidential election. So say a little bit about the politics.
The supporters in Switzerland, the supporters of the UBI were too naive in a way. And I also didn't realize how harsh politics is. Because the referendum was just about to have a kind of basic decision. So
You mean yes or no?
Yes or no, whether politics should work out the details afterwards. It was just to have a kind of basic decision, yes or no. And then the opponents jumped into this vacuum by bringing in the numbers, figures, the size of the basic income in a ridiculously high level. And then these numbers were in the room and the supporters could not react on that. That was one point. Second point, because it was just a basic decision that should have been taken, that was actually, to the Alaska case again, there was no discussion about the income side. It was just, and this was always my point. I said, my experience is, you have to say something about the costs and how to finance and how does this affect the tax system. If you are just going to discuss about the expenditure side, you will fail. You will not find people that are going to support you because then everybody becomes uncertain. And you have, that is actually a trick I did with the book here. We developed a so-called unique basic income calculator. And it's on the internet, and people can now just type in their gross income, and then they could calculate according to different scenarios and get out the net effects on their availability of available household incomes. You have to say something about the income, the tax system. Finland is now, they do this pilot starting this year. I think this will not work. I'm completely against the hope to get some insights because it's restricted to 2 years. It's 5,000 people, so they will know that after the 2 years the old system comes back, and so they will not really adjust to a new system. They will just, it's a windfall profit for them. They will just say, let's take the money for 2 years and then it's gone anyway.
So it's essentially comparable to what Y Combinator is doing in Open.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a short-term thing with us.
Yeah, and limited access, yeah.
So you think that experiment will also not yield useful?
I went through, there is a well-researched study about the negative income tax going back to the 60s in the United States. There is a lot of literature about this experiment in the early 60s with the Milton Friedman negative income tax. And the results were obviously biased by the fact that everybody knew it was a pilot and they were not representative for the system at all. Yeah.
But we have it here as the earned income tax credit. It's part of the U.S. tax code.
I know.
And in Alaska, by the way, which is only about $1,000 a year, it's sharing the natural wealth of Alaska. It's not a poverty program.
No.
Yeah.
Or universal basic income.
Yeah.
Probably I should check
It's a dividend.
more deeply the Alaska case. Probably that is a good comment, a good improvement of the argument. Yeah, probably I should check the analysis, whether there is empirical analysis of changing
There's
behavior.
Another case that could be of some interest, which is in Mongolia, but there's a child benefit. Every child gets a certain cash transfer based on mineral exports.
Yeah.
You know, again, it's sharing among the population a national benefit wealth.
Actually, do you know Tony Atkinson here in
Sure, he was chairman of the board of-
okay, and he was the committee. He was on the head of
something called the Luxembourg Income Study.
Yeah,
which
exactly.
now goes by the name LIS, but he located here in the.
and he was the supervisor of Thomas Piketty, the capital in 21st century, and he has a proposal about not paying the amount on a continuous base, but to give it the kids with in the age of 18, so that they could have a kind of
Nest egg to start with.
a stock of capital, whether they are going to spend it for universities, education, or whatever.
Okay, well, I think we've kind of come to the end of our time, but please join me in thanking Thomas Straubhaar for a very interesting talk about something that I think we're all going to be talking about for some time to come.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Sure.
Can I ask a mechanical question?
Sure.
Corporations.
Yeah.
Profits, when they distribute,
I'm not gonna tax corporation in my models anymore.
okay, so if a corporation earns profits but does not distribute